I'll ask you to begin with me by imagining a young boy in India growing up in great poverty. And when he's very young, he goes out with his older brother to search the trains, to comb the trains after people have gotten off, looking for loose change or anything else of value that he can bring back for his family. And one day, at a very young age, this boy, Saru, gets separated from his older brother. He falls asleep on a train, and when he wakes up the next day, he literally does not know where he is. Saru eventually, because he does not even know the name of the town that he's from, ends up in the care of the state, is adopted by a family in Australia, and is raised there and has a really nice life. But as you might expect, he's always got this hole inside of him. And he wants to know about his mother and his family and this town that he came from in India. And so Saru, when he grows up, sets out on a journey to return home, to find his mother, and to be reunited with his family. So why am I telling you this true story of Saru? There's two reasons. The first is because you're a sucker for a good story. We all are. In fact, it really is deeply embedded in who we are as people. As Jonathan Gottschall writes in his great book, The Storytelling Animal, we as a species are addicted to story, and if you want to implant a message in the human mind, the best way to do that is to put it in a story. And so when I talk about brand storytelling, I really want you to think differently from what we had been calling branded content or branded entertainment for the last 10 years or so. Because branded content or branded entertainment can be treated as a tactic by people. Something cool or interesting or fun that you might stick on to all of the other marketing and entertainment you're doing. But story-led marketing is truly the future of marketing. It's really a world where the best way to put a message in the human mind, because we as a species have evolved to make sense of the world through storytelling, there really is brain science behind this. And that's the first reason that I told you Saru's story. The second reason I told you Saru's story, if you're not familiar with it already, is because it represents the future of marketing, because in fact what I described to you was an ad for an internet mapping service. Take a look.
It was 26 years ago, and I was just about to turn 5. We got to the train station and we boarded our train together. My brother just said, I'll stay here and I'll come back. And I just thought, well, you know, I might as well just go to sleep and then just wake me up. And when I wake up the next day, the whole carriage was empty on a runaway train, a ghost train taking me I don't know where. I was adopted out to Australia to a Australian family, and Mum had decorated my room with the map of India, which she put next to my bedside. I woke up every morning seeing that map, and hence it sort of kept the memories alive. People would say, you're trying to find a needle in a haystack, Saru, you never find it. I'd have flashes of the places that I used to go, the flashes of my family faces. There was the image of my mother sitting down with her legs crossed, just watching her cry. Life is just so hard. That was my treasure. And I was looking at Google Map, realised there's Google Earth as well, a world where you could zoom into. I started to have all these thoughts in what possibilities that this could do for me. I said to myself, well, you know, you've got all the photographic memories and landmarks where you're from and you know what the town looks like. This could be an application that you could use to find your way back. I thought, well, I'll put a dot on Calcutta train station in a radius line that, you know, you should be searching around this area. I sort of came across these train tracks and I started following it, and I came to a train station which reflected the same image that was in my memories. Everything matched. I just thought, yep, I know where I'm going. I'm just going to let the map that I have in my head to lead me and take me back to my hometown. I came to the doorstep of the house that I was born and walked around about 15 metres around the corner. There was 3 ladies standing outside adjacent to each other, and the middle one stepped forward, and I just thought, this is your mother. She came forward, she hugged me, and you know, we were there for about 5 minutes. She grabbed my hand and she took me to the house and got on the phone. She rang my sister and my brother to say that, you know, your brother has just all of a sudden appeared like a ghost. And then the family was reunited again. Everything's all good. They helped my mother out. She doesn't have to be slaving away. She can live the rest of her life in peace. It was a needle in a haystack, but the needle is there. Everything's there. Everything we have in the world is the tap of a button, but you've got to have the will and the determination to wanting it.
Absolutely beautiful piece of content and example of storytelling. I didn't create this, by the way, but I absolutely love this, and I think it's an amazing example. If I had told you, even a few years ago, that Google could make an ad that would make you cry, you might have laughed at me for even saying that. So we really do believe at UM Studios in this idea of brand storytelling, and it's about brands really finding the stories that are worthy of an audience's time. When people ask me, what do you mean by content, what do you mean by story, it really just means making stuff that's worthy of people's time, because I truly believe that the interruptive, intrusive age of advertising is coming to an end, and that we are in an age where if you don't make content that is worthy of people's time, they won't spend time with you. So we talk about this a lot, obviously, with our clients, and we were asked if we could put together for them some of the best practices, which is what I'm going to share with you today. Starting with number one, find your why. And that Saru's story is a great example of finding your why. What do I mean by this? There's a great TED Talk online by a guy called Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And Simon basically says that almost every company knows what they do. Most companies know how they do what they do, but very few companies know why they do what they do. And he argues that not only do the greatest companies in the world know why they do what they do, but they start with why. They don't start with how and they don't start with what. They start with why and they work out from there. And as I watched this for the first time, this talk, I realized that the why of a brand is the story of a brand. Google Maps is a great example of a brand that wasn't talking about what it does. It was talking about the role that played in people's lives in a very real and engaging and connected way. And I'd like to show you quickly another example of that from the Philippines, and a really terrific example from Saatchi & Saatchi in the Philippines of a brand knowing and finding its why in people's lives. Take a look.
In the Philippines, 90% of all internet advertising is numbers, bandwidth, and mega blah blah blahs. PLDT MyDSL, the Philippines' biggest internet provider, wanted a new campaign. So we convinced them to get emotional. Introducing a virtual meets reality love story, showing how digital connections create emotional ones. We hired unknown actors and made the public believe they were real, giving them active, unbranded social media accounts. And kicked off our story with teenager Derek S. Lorenzo, who made a song for his crush on YouTube.
And a banana, I love you a bunch. That's like your monkey if we go out for lunch.
Next, we introduced his mom to promote her son's video, online, on ground, and on radio call-ins.
Is it okay if I promote his video on YouTube?
Oh my god, it's so okay.
Anna Banana became YouTube Philippines' most viewed video and most imitated too. So we introduced our brand by reskinning Derek's YouTube channel, revealing a clue we gave from the start, followed by a multimedia campaign led by a TV spot showing how our story began. However, the public still believed they were real. So who are we to get in the way of a good story? So we introduced Anna Banana herself and got her to respond to Derek with her own song on YouTube. But it wasn't what anyone expected.
Derek, forget it, I don't like you that much. You dance like a monkey and I don't think that's odd.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to move on from that because it goes on. But one of the most amazing things about that story, Derek does find true love, by the way, another girl who comes along who does love him where Anna doesn't. What's most amazing, if you didn't hear it within there, is that after they revealed that this was an ad, the audience did not want to believe it. The audience kept treating this like a real story, and the internet comments for months afterwards talked about this kid and these girls as if they were real people. And again, it just really shows you that when you can make that connection, you can really have a much deeper relationship with people by pulling them in with the power of story. Number two, it's not all about you. This is a very hard thing for a lot of brands to recognize because, again, most brands were trained from the beginning that what you should do in your marketing materials is talk about yourself. Stand in front of people, figure out what message you want to deliver to them, and deliver it to them. And in fact, in today's world, it really isn't enough. You don't define who the brand is. Your audience defines who it is as much as you do. And in fact, brands have to stop and not think about what they want to talk about, but they have to listen and understand what their audiences are already talking about, figure out where they add value to that conversation, and then tell that story. Number three, insights inspire ideas. This seems simple, but in fact, here's two things that have normally happened. On the media side of the business for many years, what typically happened is that a media publisher or company owner would come along and say, here's a piece of content we're making, here's a story we're telling, and hey, we need a car company or a beauty company or a food company to sponsor it or be a part of it or be integrated into it. That wasn't an insight-driven idea. In the other case, creatives would often go off in many cases and come up with great ideas that maybe weren't connected to other things other than being a great idea that they thought could attach to a sponsor. And in fact, the model that we're heading towards is one where we used to think of data and creativity as two different things, but in fact, we now use data to find the insights into the audience and into the business challenge that spark creativity. So data has become the engine of creativity. I'm going to show you something fantastic out of our office in Europe that just happened for Microsoft, and it really came from a great insight into the gamer audience for Xbox, which was that they didn't want to be told things, they wanted the ability to discover it on their own.
Peggy 18.
So literally, that was a 1-second ad that was stuck inside of an existing 30-second spot that for most people looked like a mistake, but for the gamer audience, they went back and they looked at the 25 frames of that 1 second and found 37 hours worth of content within it. So it was both the shortest and the longest ad they had ever seen, and a fantastic, just driven by that first insight that this audience wanted to discover rather than being told. Number 4, go all the way. And by the way, I'm using examples obviously against specific principles, but you'll find that some of the best work you're seeing today touches on many of these, if not all of them. Go all the way is just a simple way of saying that for many brands, there's still a fear when they're using content marketing of any kind, and so they tend to isolate it and separate it from everything else they're doing and want to judge it on their own. And in fact, what we're seeing already in this world is that the best and most sophisticated examples of brand storytelling are truly the ones where the idea is at the center and they are activated through everything that a brand does. I'm going to tie in because the next thing I'm going to show you is a great example of both going all the way and being social at the core, which really, again, means that for many people, social has come at the end of the process. They talk about the idea they want to create, and then they figure out what the social strategy against that is going to be to spread the word. And in fact, again, some of the best work that we're seeing is work that is built social from the beginning, is meant to be shaped and shared as much by its audience as its creators. And here's the best example from Australia, from McCann in Melbourne, that I've seen in a long time.
Set fire to your hair, poke a stick at a grizzly bear, eat medicine that's out of date, use your private parts as piranha bait. Dumb ways to die, so many dumb ways to die. Dumb ways to die, so many dumb ways to die.
How many people were familiar with that before I showed it? Just about everybody. And that's true of the world. And of course, this was actually a rail safety ad for Australia, and that song charted in 28 countries. I actually almost found a new dumb way to die because after I first was exposed to that, I sang it so many times that the people in my office threatened to kill me if I sang it one more time. But Dumb Ways to Die, if you're not familiar with it, some people have said to me, oh, that's that music video. Well, in fact, it was much, much more than that from the beginning. There were videos that people created their own versions of it. There were songs that were taught to schools as part of rail safety programs and PSAs. There were ads that were made to be shot as outdoor ads to be put on Instagram as they were shot. There was this song that you could pay for and download on iTunes, which again charted in 28 countries. So it really was a campaign that was not social as an afterthought. It was social at its core. And it did go all the way because it really was taking that one idea at the core of it and then putting that and threading that through every part of the communication. Number 6, don't post and pray. It was just said after the last panel. Distribution, people often talk about is distribution king or is content king, and the answer is yes, they both are. And really, it's amazing. We have a brand that we work with that spends literally 20% of its marketing budget on content creation. And in every case, 100% of that, until a year ago, there was no thought to distribution being done in advance. They would create the content and then figure out where they were going to put it. And of course, they were often disappointed in the results. And so it's really important that you're thinking not just about the story you want to tell, but when and where you want to tell it from the beginning. Be authentic. Sounds like an easy one, but actually it's really difficult at times, especially when you get into storytelling. I had a brand manager ask me recently, if we don't know what our why is, if we don't know what our story is, do we just make one up? And the answer is no, of course you don't make it up, because especially in storytelling, more than in any form of traditional advertising, your audience will see right through you. And being authentic in storytelling is really key, and being consistent. And I think Coca-Cola is one of the greatest brands in the world at doing this. They've stood for one thing, which is sharing happiness all around the world for a long time. And they don't just talk about it, they've begun to actually create those experiences as a brand, whether that's the can that splits in half so that people can literally share their Coke with somebody else and share their happiness, whether it's the vending machine in India and Pakistan so that people could buy a Coke for each other in each of those countries, or whether it's something like this in Thailand.
We are known as the land of smiles. In November 2011, we faced the worst floods in history. 65 of Thailand's 77 provinces were declared flood disaster zones, isolating 2/3 of the populations and submerging landmarks, buildings, and factories underwater. The crisis unfolded minute by minute. News program viewership increased by 16%. TV stations responded to the demand by adding more than 150% of news content, and social networks became the real-time information center. The devastating loss of life and property had a tremendous effect on the confidence and happiness of all Thais. Although only 2/3 of Thais were directly affected by the floods, everyone was emotionally affected. As a happiness ambassador, Coke launched Million Reasons to Believe in Thailand campaign with the aim of injecting good news to society and recharging the whole country's confidence. We gathered inspirational stories from flood victims to tell how they overcome their personal tragedy, as well as tales of heroism from volunteers whose contribution brought back smiles. We set up the first interactive illumination on a building to serve as a beacon of hope, showcasing these tales of heroism and personal triumph over tragedy. Consumers were invited to submit their stories and messages to appear on the building in real time. National pride picked up as thousands of people shared their stories on social networks and became an online phenomenon. The trend to replace bad news with stories of hope attracted mass attention that was further reinforced into a partnership with major news programs in making daily good news into a permanent features on the shows. Finally, to announce the success of our campaign, we built the Hall of Happiness, the biggest Coke bottle ever created on the planet, to exhibit every story and message shared by all ties. By the end of the campaign, more than 1 million Thais shared their happiness, and overwhelming 137 million conversations were engaged with the campaign. Even as Thailand's GDP suffered a minus 4.2% drop due to the floods, the social relevance campaign helped increase Coke's sales by 6%. As a happiness ambassador, Coke achieved in making Thailand the land of smiles once again.
So just, I think, a really inspiring and beautiful example of authentic storytelling and a brand that has consistently told that story and actually made it a reality as well. Number 8, loosen your grip. There are so many brands that still really want to control every aspect of how their story gets told. But in fact, in this age of storytelling, whether your audience is telling your story with you, whether you're telling it yourself, or whether you're working with some of the greatest storytellers out there, because there isn't a film director, an author, a producer that doesn't want a musician that won't work with brands now, not just because they want their money, of course they want their money, but more and more they really do see them as creative collaborators in getting things done. But brands have to learn how to let go a little. I was involved a couple of years ago in a car commercial, a car piece of content, excuse me, and in the storytelling with a top film director, the car company's first instinct was that the only angle at which the car could still be shot was the angle that they were used to shooting it for in their print ads and TV commercials, and really understand that they had to loosen their grip and let go and let the image of the car go to this director within guidelines, obviously, and boundaries. Of course, with your audience, you often don't even have those boundaries. Your audience is going to define your brand the way they define it, and you have to be able to go with that, celebrate that, and make it a part of who you are as opposed to fighting it. Number 9, be the expert. This is just a way of saying that when we think about content and storytelling, we tend to focus on entertainment, but in fact, when it comes to information and utility, there's a lot of value that brands can add. Many brands have an expertise in a certain topic. Sometimes they've been afraid to share that. Think about American Express and what they've now done with small business owners around the world, because they realize that through the data and the insights they could glean from millions of real-time transactions, they could be as much or a more valued partner than any other journalistic enterprise to how small businesses succeed. And so they turned what had been maybe a surcharge in American Express for small businesses into an investment and being a partner to help those small businesses succeed. Another wonderful example that I was lucky enough to be involved with involves BMW, which became a sponsor of the U.S. Olympic Committee a couple of years ago, but they decided that they wanted to take their expertise in design and engineering and technology, and rather than just win the right to put the rings in ads, they wanted to help make better athletes. So they went to the U.S. teams and they said, how can we help? And what they were told was that the U.S. Olympic bobsled team had not won a gold medal in more than 70 years and had not won a medal at all in more than 60 years. And as a underfunded team, how could BMW help them, because they had a 20-year-old sled technology? So here's what came out of that. Great story.
The last time I won a gold medal in the two-man bobsled program was 1936.
Team USA hasn't won gold in the men's two-man bobsled in 78 years.
Ryan Scheimer continuing to be haunted by Olympic demons.
In 1998, that was 0.02 of a second off the podium. That's how close it was. As a coach, it's a mission of mine to end that drought.
I can win a gold medal. I fully believe that. But until you do it, it's a whole different level.
Lead pilot Steve Holcomb is one of the country's best hopes for winning gold in the two-man event.
So you're 0.4 faster today.
He's a 5-time world champion and 50-time World Cup medalist.
Number 1 says it all.
And Holcomb won gold in the 4-man bobsled in Vancouver, overcoming 62 years of disappointment. But it's gold in the two-man event that has proved elusive for Team USA.
And beyond the dedication and training of the American athletes is the need for a new bobsled to carry the team to victory.
There's really 3 components in bobsledding. It's the push, the pilot, and the bobsled.
So who do you turn to when you want to create the ultimate bobsled?
the people behind the ultimate driving machine.
We partnered with BMW after the 2010 Olympic Games. And technology that BMW does with cars, I thought it was a natural fit, and I asked to get a brand new Olympic caliber sled.
So we needed just some fresh eyes or new ideas, and they said, we're going to build you guys a new bobsled that'll help you win a gold medal.
Back set, ready?
But with a 2-year deadline, the pressure is on.
This was a very short time frame.
I just want to win.
With this new design, I think we can win a gold medal.
Driving on Ice, a special documentary presentation.
So again, just an absolutely wonderful story. And like the best stories, a very human story as well, not just about the design and the technology, but about the hopes and dreams of these athletes. And by the way, the U.S. came home with 3 medals, not a gold, but 3 other medals, which were the first medals in 62 years that we'd won in 2-man bobsled in these BMW sleds. Number 10, the most important thing here, expect results. And this is really because, again, some of the people who treat branded content or brand entertainment rather than storytelling as an experiment rather than the heart of marketing don't necessarily hold it as accountable. But we often tell brands, we always tell brands, you have to hold any of your investments in this technology, in this form of marketing as accountable as anything else you're doing and will ever do. And in fact, we believe that when you do that, you will see results. And in our own proprietary research, we've proven, and this number floats, but it tends to be higher than this sometimes, which is actually the lower number of it, that when you combine content marketing with traditional forms of marketing, you increase dramatically the impact of that. And that's not just in things, that's all the way across the funnel, or however you want to describe it, from awareness to perception to purchase intent to sales. We find that content marketing actually really delivers. In fact, we're very much working now to get rid of this idea of investments in production as being non-working media dollars, because these dollars, when done right, actually work as hard or harder than any of the other money that a brand is spending. So thank you very much for listening to me today. Hope you got some value out of that.
Thank you very much, Scott. Time for 1, maybe 2 questions. And that's because I've decided to, not because the organizers want it. But I figured this might be a topic that you'd really have some questions about. Am I right? I do have one while you're thinking of it. We all know that all that happened with the stewardess is that she offered you orange juice or beer, and you went for the beer. But what about some of these more serious, more weighty stories, such as the Coca-Cola one? Isn't there a danger that when you create a story around a disaster such as floods in Thailand, that people will point the finger and say, hang on a minute, this isn't authentic, which was one of your commandments. This isn't authentic at all. They're trying to maximize, gain leverage on somebody else's misfortune. How do you navigate those sensitive waters?
I mean, I think that there's definitely a little more risk when you're doing this kind of storytelling because you are playing in spaces that are something, but I think that that's what makes it more honest to the audience in a way, and that's what makes it more authentic, is that a Coca-Cola will have the ability to go out there, and they don't ever forget that they're a brand and they're a company. They're very clear on this. Obviously, at the end of the day, they want to sell more Coca-Cola as well, but I think it is by being in touch with the cultures, by understanding them, and by being true to who they are as a brand, that they're willing to take that risk because they believe that the authenticity of the message will come through.
But My DSL was an example of a story that was made up. Did nobody feel, hang on a minute, I've been hoodwinked, this is an ad?
They actually came out very quickly in the process of that and said what it was. And I think, again, there's an idea, this first kiss video, I don't know if that's really gotten a lot of traction out here, but definitely in the US in the last week, this video that came out for a fashion brand that asked all these people who had never met to kiss. And there were people writing online things like, oh, I love this until I realized it was an ad. And I just find that kind of thinking ridiculous, quite honestly, because at the end of the day, it's like, was it worth your time? Did you enjoy the video? And therefore, in a way, should you be thankful for the brand for having entertained you, as opposed to now it's somehow a lesser form of communication because it's a brand. I think as long as the audience isn't fooled, they should treat all content as just, was that worth my time or not?
Well, your content certainly was worth our time. Thanks again.
Thank you
Scott
very much.
Donaton from UM.